Hi, everybody. Mike Hancock here, chairman of the Circle of Excellence group of companies. And I've got a good friend of mine. I was going to say a good old friend of mine, but we're not old, are we, Jane? No, we're
No,
young. Good friend of mine, Jane Gunn. I think we originally met in a trip I did to the UK in 2014. So that's about
absolutely.
12 years ago.
Absolutely.
And so lovely to have you here. I know that, not only have you done incredible things with your speaking career, including being president of the Professional Speakers Association of UK and Ireland, but by the same token, your background is in mediation, and that's led you into a lot of interesting areas. And Jane was just telling me she negotiated or mediated $1 billion dispute this year. So that's getting up there in figures. I wonder when the first $1 trillion
Yeah,
dispute will
waiting for that,
come.
Mike.
Elon Musk versus the Rothschilds or something like that, and we'll, and we'll have $1 trillion problem on our hands.
Yeah.
Jane wants to talk to us today about critical thinking. Um, and I wonder if she's going to introduce her little friend to us at some stage. You never know. We might hear about that. I won't preempt that. Jane, over to you. Lovely to see everybody here.
Thank you. And let me just do my slide share quickly. I know I need to do that. Now, are you able to see my
Yep,
slide?
we're good.
Good. And I just need to, what have I done now? I just need to, I can't see my slides now. What have I done? Hang on a minute. I'm just trying to reduce.
Go out and come in. I always love this. One of my favorite things about running these weekly webinars is watching what everybody or listening to what everybody says as they put their slides up. Last week we had Brad, and Brad's like, "I've just got to get my slides." Here they are. Okay.
I wish it was easy. Do you know, it's a bit like when you get on an aeroplane. Every time, and you and I fly a lot, Mike, but every time you get on, you think there must be an easier way to load and unload an aeroplane.
I think that every time.
I always think that, such a fuss and people putting their bags up the same kind of fuss as we've got now with my slides. Anyway, I hope you can see my slides.
We're good.
All right. So, critical thinking in critical times. I do believe we're living in critical times. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And I want to encourage you today to think what I call deeply, differently, and dangerously, and ask you, do you do that? If you do, in what circumstances? And then to think, does it interest you or even perplex you or even shock you to know that we're all very confident in our thinking, um, but often very mistaken, and that we don't think critically in critical times. And as Mike mentioned, I've recently been mediating a large commercial dispute. And in all of my commercial disputes, the parties believe they're absolutely right and the other one's absolutely wrong. And then sometimes I ask them a simple question is, what if you're not actually lying to each other, but what if you're just seeing things differently on different islands? We'll talk about that too. And then a moment of silence while they think about my question. Um, and maybe that's replacing their certainty with some curiosity. And that's where I want us to begin, is to replace our certainty about many things with curiosity and just think deeply, differently, and dangerously. So, as Mike said, I'm a mediator. I'm known as the barefoot mediator, and that's not because I don't wear shoes, though often I don't. And much in lockdown where that nickname came from, but really because I think the skills, the tools, and mindset that I use in mediation shouldn't be reserved to professional mediators, but should be used by everybody in the way that barefoot doctors initially existed in China. So an idea that we can all use these simple skills and tools. I am the creator of Maurice the Mole, who I will introduce you to later, and a book called The Mole and the Mountain. And I'm also a mother and grandmother, and I've got four granddaughters, but one of them, Isla, is a great critical thinker, shall I say. She's only 5, but her favorite phrases as she began to learn to walk and talk were, "Oh, wow." And then if she did something, she'd say, "Did it?" But my favorite one is when she wants to challenge some thinking or be curious, she says, "No way." And I do think we should all say "no way" a little bit more often sometimes, and not to necessarily go with the flow. So I think the most dangerous phrase is "I'm certain." And the two key principles that underlie my work in mediation are question everything, which I call either fervent or rebellious curiosity, because, and I have a note above my desk which says fervent curiosity is more important than expert knowledge. And I do think that's true. We rely on expertise, our own and others sometimes, instead of just being curious and thinking why, or does that really make sense, or what really matters. And the second principle of mediation is you decide, it's up to you. And that's all that I'm doing. What many of us do as coaches too is providing people with a framework for questioning that they come up with their own decision. So those are the things that are really important. So certainty or curiosity. Now, a speaker colleague of mine came on my podcast recently, and he talked about this topic of certainty or curiosity. And let me ask you this question. I wonder how many of you believe in the tooth fairy. And I wonder how many of you have believed in the tooth fairy in the past, or maybe Santa Claus. And when you did, let me ask you, why did you believe in it? Why did you believe in the tooth fairy? And again, my granddaughters do believe in the tooth fairy, and they're busy losing teeth. So it's very expensive business, not for me, but for their parents. But we tend to believe in something like the tooth fairy when we're little because a figure of authority told us it was true. So our parents or grandparents or maybe a teacher at school. Then we have social proof. All our friends believe in the tooth fairy and we talk about it. And then finally, we have actual proof. Underneath our pillow in the morning after we lost our tooth is a coin. That might be 5p or £1 or £2. I know the price of teeth has gone up. But was it actually true? And this is what Peter and I discussed, is that we think things are true, we have absolute certainty, and yet somewhere a little seed of doubt sown in, and then we discover it wasn't true. And Peter reflects how actually angry one of his children was when they discovered that Santa Claus wasn't true and that their parents had been lied to for many years. So we do have to be careful how we use our own skills of persuasion. And so critical thinking is asking us and asking each other, what else could be true? What information am I missing? And am I reacting to facts or a story I've created or someone else has created? And the gap between perception and reality is actually where the disputes are born and where decisions are made. So this mediation process that I facilitate is a process of critical thinking and decision making, and it's of testing reality versus perception. So we go through a process which I'll share with you today called reality testing. What's the brutal truth of this situation? So today I'm going to take you on a journey, and it is this journey that I take all my clients on. And I think we can use this process in business, in life, but not only when we've got disputes, but when we've got decisions to make, when we've got important dialogue, when we need to facilitate meetings and so on. So I'd like you to think critically about a situation that impacts you, and perhaps as we go through this process, be thinking about the particular thing you've got some questions about, or perhaps you haven't had some questions about, would like to ask some questions about. It could be something that impacts you personally, something that impacts you on a business level, or maybe it's something bigger that impacting us in society right now, because as I say, I do feel it's a confusing time. So let me just ask you, what are some of the things that are bugging you? Mike and I were just talking before we switched on the webinar about keeping up with the AI. Seems to be a huge topic at the moment. And I chatted to another colleague yesterday. She's both a mediator and a speaker. And she was saying, I'm thinking of giving up because I just can't keep up with AI and I don't want to. So that's a big issue for many people. Financial meltdown, we keep being threatened or promised that's going to happen. Staying relevant, how do we stay relevant in this world that's going so fast? What about the impact of geopolitics? Then many of us are suffering from stress and burnout, as I say, thinking about quitting. And then what impact is all of that having on our relationships and on our health and on our well-being and even how we treat the family dog? So there's some things I'm sure you could add to the list, and do add in the chat box any other thoughts that you've got about things that are bugging you right now. So there's a difference then between what I call herd mentality, following what everybody else is doing, and herd mentality, which is the sense of being heard and or of hearing others. So herd mentality, for example, in this meeting, is where we all agree, right? And everybody smiles, but underneath they don't agree. And I've been a chair of a board in the past where people tended to agree in the meeting and then went away and wrote me very long emails to say they didn't actually agree with what was going on in the meeting, but they didn't have the courage to speak up or to think critically in that meeting. So herd mentality is perhaps then whose voice haven't we heard? And this skill of thinking critically can be about pausing, inviting, and listening. So I believe that what I'm sharing with you is also a leadership superpower. And what is it that stops critical thinking? I've been working with an organization recently where people were very afraid to speak up. So fear, I think, often is behind what stops critical thinking. If you imagine being in one of those meetings where you see a flaw in the plan, and this is exactly what my client had done in this situation, they'd seen a flaw in the thinking, they did speak up and then got jumped on. So this is very often why people don't say something. It's not because of lack of intelligence. It's because of fear, because of looking foolish, because of being excluded, or because of being that person who even risks losing their job by speaking up. Because often the fear that we feel these days, particularly if we're not keeping up with a particular agenda, is fear of social exclusion, fear of social punishment, fear of being vulnerable to control. And we are all vulnerable to control, to manipulation, to influence, to our emotions and to bias. And that would be another whole webinar to go into exactly what the social pressures are that encourage us to conform. But as it is, and I don't know whose phrase this is, the world as you see it is simply the world as you see it. So each of us has our own island. We see the same event. We sit in this webinar today, but we see it and experience it through our own lens. So we have different experiences and different truths, if you like. And so instead of saying who's right, I believe we need to build bridges between our islands. We are all on these islands, and there are many levels on which we think. I've been thinking about it recently as we have automatic thoughts or things that we think, we do automatically, breathing, for example. And then we have little thoughts. We have little thoughts. What I have for lunch? What clothes shall I wear today? And then we have big thoughts, much bigger thoughts, perhaps about our businesses or our lives, which are going to have consequences for ourselves and others. And then thinking about what is it that influences those thoughts, because we make decisions based on our thoughts and our thinking. So what's influencing our thinking right now? And I think maybe some of those things are influencers. We're all prone to seeing influencers on Facebook, on social media itself and TV, social media. Of course, our family has a huge impact on what we think and believe, certainly in our younger years. And I'm very conscious of that with my grandchildren. Groups that we belong to, organizations like speaker groups and even Mike's group, they influence our thinking. Policies and protocols, advertising. I remember the first time when my daughter said, "Dad, Mummy, you're using the right soap powder." I said, "Well, how do you know that?" And she said, "Well, I saw it advertised on TV." And there you go, how easily we are influenced by advertising. And then a controversial subject maybe, but substances, even a cup of coffee, alcohol, drugs, neurodiversity, all of those impact how and why we think. And so there's no criticism in that. It's just being aware of perhaps we are not thinking entirely independently. Perhaps we are being programmed to a degree in the way we think and see things. So we need to think then about books and media and AI, not as sources of truth, which often they're sold to us as, but actually they reflect a perspective and a narrative of the writer, of the producer, and that when we read and do training courses and gather information, we're doing that to gather information and wisdom. So one of the things I say about my work is we need to have fully informed consent. And that means we need to get fully informed. And then we decide what to do with that information. Then we think critically about it. And so it isn't about following the crowd or adopting the latest trend or believing in the most persuasive narrative, but about doing what we believe is right. So I talk then about the flawed approach. The flawed approach is to believe that you're right or that someone else is right or the particular narrative is right, and then defend that to the death. And that's what I see happening in the legal cases that I mediate. I call that the injection theory, because every lawyer I know believes that if they create the most persuasive argument and they load it directly into their syringe and directly inject it into the brain of the other person, actually by providing them with stacks of legal documents and proof, the others will say, I can see that you're right, and we'll give in. But that never happens. So, but the trouble with that approach is when we believe that we're right or that somebody else is right, we start defending that. We move into this space of defend and attack, and we fail to step back and think critically either about our own thinking or about other people's thinking, and everything feels like an insult or a threat, and resolution or even reality slips further away from us. And we often end up in this place that I call the murky, or the deep, dark abyss. And I'll come back to why I've talked about this, but WMD stands for weapons of mass destruction. So we end up in a place which is very destructive to us. And the WMD, you'll see why we have that shortly. So let's move on to this alternative approach that I use with my clients. And I use a map and a compass. And actually one other thing that we'll come back to later. So as I say, we can use the map and the compass for dialogue, debate, disagreement, dispute, when you want to think about new direction or any decision. And the map is thinking about having a framework. Where do I actually want to end up? The compass is what process will guide me. And the compass, as you'll see, is the process that I use with my clients in mediation. And then the critical thinking is, as we go through, perspective shifting, creating clarity under pressure, and principled decision making. And that's really important. So as I say, think of one thing that's bugging you at the moment that you'd like to make a deeper inquiry about, and let's go through that process. So the second WMD is what would Morris do? In my book, The Mole and the Mountain, is a character called Morris. I will introduce you to him later. The story, very briefly, is about Morris waking up after a storm and his entire home, the tunnels under the oak tree, has been destroyed. The oak tree is blown over that had been there for 300 years. And he has to think critically, what do I do next? Do I just burrow down, hide away, and pretend that nothing happened? Or do I open up, look at the options, and go out into the landscape that's opened up for me and make some choices for myself? So that's, in a very brief nutshell, the story of Morris. And it's about shifting from darkness and tunnel vision to this journey of discovery, facing reality, making informed choices, and reaching eventually the mountain top. So here's the map. This is the map that is in my book and the story that unfolds. And as you can see, it's quite a landscape. And I'm going to introduce you to just 4 elements of that map, which we go through as we go on the journey. There's the storm, the crisis, the thing you need to think about. There's this place where you can't think clearly and you're stuck in the mud, which we call the murky swamp of reality. Then there's the bridge of courage over which you need to go if you're going to really make a decision and stick to it. And finally, there's the mountain top of experience. Where is it you're going? What does it look like? And actually, how long is the journey to get there? Longer than you think. And then just a few more of the elements on the map there. There's the fallen oak tree. Life is never, ever, ever going back to how it was before. How many of us in COVID lockdown thought, well, we'll just sit it out for 3 weeks and it'll all be fine. It wasn't. So never believe life is going back to as it was before. Many of us are wearing the wrong shoes. That could be the wrong mindset. It could be we've got the wrong people around us. Think about that. We've all got a lot of baggage. We've all been around for a while and we're carrying baggage. Be aware of it. You can't see it. It's on your back, but it's there. And there's always a slippery snake at the crossroads who wants to influence, manipulate, draw you into his world or her world. Be aware of the slippery snake. So here's the process that I go through with all my clients. It's a process based on the compass, and we think about it in these 4 elements. What's happening now? What's the problem or issue we need to explore? How do we explore that more deeply, understand the impact? What solutions are there, and how do we walk forwards? And I find with my clients, and many of us would rather have somebody who absolutely told us the answer to all our problems. That doesn't work. You have to go through this whole process and think for yourself. So here we go. Here's the storm. So think about your own issue and frame it in this way. What is it that's happening now? What is the story or narrative that you are telling yourself? Maybe what are other stories or narratives that other people are telling you? And what's negative about that? What are the outcomes? Why do you fear that? So many of us, as you saw with the image there of Morris with his head in the mud, our instinct is often to deny danger, that disbelief prevails over reality, and we have no plans. So it's much easier to stay where we are, to stay in the dark, than to look out at something for which we've not believed could ever happen. And I do believe many of us are beginning to feel that now with AI. It's like, where did this come from? What is it? How do we deal with it? Could I just stay in my bunker, please? That would be much more comfortable. Here's the next place, and this is the place where my clients never want to go because it feels uncomfortable. It's the murky swamp of reality. In the story, Morris gets stuck in a swamp, and I believe most of us are here most of our lives, actually. So we need to ask ourselves, what do you not know that you need to explore? What further evidence perhaps do you need to gather? Where do you need to look for that? Perhaps the narratives and the evidence that is being easily given to you could be looked beyond. And what is your and others' experience? So here we need to be thinking about what's the brutal truth of your situation. And there's a line in a song by Simon and Garfunkel that says, "Hello, darkness, my old friend." We do need to look into the darkness sometimes. Brian Tracy, the famous speaker, has said that he revealed a secret that enables you to solve any problem, which says, sit quietly and go into the darkness, go into the silence. So this is where you need to think deeply, differently, and dangerously. If you want to go higher, you've got to go deeper first. And that can always feel uncomfortable. So thinking about what support do you need at this stage from someone to help you do this deep exploration. Next step is the bridge of courage. What is possible? Where could you go from here? What are the options? What other suggestions are there? And what do you need to settle this? And by settle it, I mean, what do you need to draw a line under that, not to have to wake up and feel regret, to know that you've made a good decision and you don't have to look back. So that's about being able to draw a line and say, I made the best decision at the time, I'm moving forward. So here you need to have options, but you also need to have criteria. When I've been chairing meetings, and I've often said to people who are making big decisions around their businesses, what are the criteria for your decision? They look at me very puzzled and say, we don't really know. But that's an important question. What are the criteria? What's driving your decision? And the question you can ask here is who and what matters most to you and why? And who and what matters most to them and why? So thinking about some really critical questions here. And this is where our values come in. Here are the set of values that I use as a mediator. But what are your criteria and what are your core values that drive your decision making, whatever is happening? Mine are to listen to everybody, to every narrative, to every point of view, to learn from that, to love, which means really to treat people kindly with courtesy and respect, and always to laugh. Really important that we keep our humor in these times. And so the final step then is the mountaintop. How do we get to the mountaintop? What is it we've agreed that we need to do to walk forwards to achieve that goal that we want to? What have you learned along the way? I like to think of myself these days as an elder. I've gathered a lot of wisdom along the way, mostly from making mistakes, from having challenging times. What wisdom have you gained? And what is it that now enables you to see this whole picture? Have a look at Morris here. He can suddenly see the whole landscape. Now, the final part of this journey, and one that I'm just adding so you can see the sketches are only in sketch form, is the acorn. In the story, as the oak tree blows over, Morris picks up one acorn and sticks it in his pocket. And finally, at the end of his journey, however long that took, he gets to the top of the mountain, or maybe the base of the mountain, because I don't think an acorn would grow at the top, but he plants his acorn. And I want to think about, for you, what is your acorn? What is your why? What is the seed you hope to plant that will live beyond you? I was talking to Mike before we started the webinar about 7 generations thinking, and I've been exploring back to my ancestors several generations ago. My great-great-great-grandfather was born exactly 200 years before me. And then moving forward, I can now see 2 generations with my children and grandchildren, but thinking about a time beyond even that. Everything that we're making decisions about now, in particular things like AI, are going to impact generations beyond us. It's not just about us and what's great for our business and what might bring in more money, I think, but to plant a tree under whose shade you will never sit. I can't remember whose saying that is, but the acorn we plant in our thinking and our deciding has the potential to create a forest. Just think about that. So what is your acorn and what is your forest? So just a final wrap up then, some questions to promote critical thinking for you are: how do you know this is true? What are the underlying assumptions of your argument? What's another way for you to look at this? And this in particular, what are the larger implications of this decision? So I have a phrase which I'm beginning to use, is that only dead fish go with the flow. We live in a world that rewards speed, certainty, and slogans. We feel it all the time. I believe critical thinking is teaching us something radical. It's teaching us something that maybe the loudest people are not the wisest, but perhaps the wisest people are the most curious. And critical thinking is not about winning arguments, as we saw. It's about, maybe it's about pausing. So when everybody else is rushing in one direction, maybe we pause, maybe we even turn in the opposite direction. It's about asking better questions, questioning everything. That's really my mantra. Question everything. Choose understanding over assumptions. And the map that I've shown you reminds us where we want to go. The compass reminds us how to move forwards. And then this acorn is reminding us of our why. So my final word to you really is that storms are coming. Storms are always coming in the workplace, in the boardroom, in life. And the question is not whether you'll face them. It's how you'll face the challenges and complexity. Do you face them with fear or with curiosity, with certainty or with humility or with reaction or with that wisdom which we all build over time? So my invitation to you is to stop, ask a better question, to dig, to think deeply, differently, and dangerously, and not to go with the flow, to have humor, humanity, and humility. So finally, remember, only dead fish go with the flow. Thank you very much. I've got a couple more slides I always forget to show, but here's The Mole and the Mountain, a parable for our time, if anybody's interested in it. And here I am on LinkedIn. If you would like a handout, a summary of this presentation, please email me. I'll put there's my email address there. And I'm happy to share that with you. Thank you, Mike, for inviting me today.
Jane, thank you. I was going to say, just before we go, you can put that slide back up, but we'll do that maybe in another couple of minutes. So
With you,
there's
Morris. Yes, Morris. I've had Morris made into an actual figure who travels around the world with me. So
yeah, he is an exceptional creature. That is for sure. So let me just
you wanted me to share that slide again.
yeah, do that. I'll just mute some background noise on somebody. Done that. Just in case anybody wants to get a great book on Morris the Mole, and there he is with his lip gloss on. I can see that.
His lip gloss, it's his tongue. There we go. So that's the book, The Mole and the Mountain. I think I've got a copy, did bring a copy up. Can't think what I've done with it. Here it is, The Mole and the Mountain.
It is, sorry, I'll let you put it up in a minute once I stop talking because I've got it on speaker. But it is a modern parable, and it's got a lot to do with critical thinking and mediation. So let's have a look at Morris again and the book. Morris. So I'll just stop sharing for you.
Oh, let me think. So here's Morris. You see his little backpack? There he is. And he travels around the world with me in a cat backpack. So I get a lot of questions as to whether I'm bringing a cat into events and private meetings, private members clubs. And when I say, no, it's not a cat, it's a mole, again, I get met with great curiosity. It's really good fun. So Morris he's a great travel companion, I have to say. I arrived at an event as a speaker the other day and I had to go through security. It was in a big event and all the security guards came up. They completely abandoned what they were doing because they wanted to meet Morris, which was great fun.
I think it's fantastic. Jane, I want to ask you one of the things before we open it up to questions, I'll kick it off. I liked what you said about criteria for decisions. So I want to pose a scenario to you that I think some people on this call will be dealing with at the moment. And that is, should I dive in wholeheartedly and invest time, energy, and money into really understanding the AI world? Or should I sort of just stay as I am and have my peripheral understanding of it? What criteria do you think would be relevant to even start thinking about that question?
Yes, that's a great question, Mike. I think you've got to understand many, many different things. And of course, the criteria for everybody will be different. But I think digging very deeply is to think, what is AI? To start with, what is it? What does it potentially offer? I'm always thinking a great legal Latin phrase is cui bono, who benefits? So we have to look and see who's pushing this and who benefits most from me adopting it. So that's one question. And I think then thinking about what does it offer me and what does it possibly take away from me. So one blog I just answered this morning, and I'm very conscious, as I say, having children and grandchildren, looking into the future. And the question there was, are some young people using AI to even prompt them how to start a conversation because they don't they lack the skills to start a conversation, and that's a challenge, isn't it? So I'm not only looking at what does it do for me, but looking into the future, what might it be taking away from others who might use it when they haven't had the opportunities that I've had to develop the skills and tools that I have in terms of conversation and critical thinking and so on. Does it possibly take away from that? I've used it myself, and I can see how easy it is to rely on it, to maybe get a little bit lazy with my thinking. So I think we've got to ask ourselves, what is it? What's the bigger picture over time? Who's benefiting from it? Do I benefit from it, but who else benefits from it more? What's the bigger agenda? And exactly how am I going to use it? What is it going to do for me? I yet don't know anybody who tells me they're spending half their day relaxing now because they're so much less busy.
Exactly. That's exactly what I think. Fred's got in the chat here, weirdly enough, one of the hottest skills at the moment is the ability to reach out and talk to strangers. And that's so true. Laura, before that, says, I'll come back to Fred's story. Laura says, our daughter's nickname is Catmull. It's a long story, don't ask. But coming back to Fred's statement there is, when Lundy and I got married, you have the tables at the wedding and you put people together who may not know each other. And you're always trying to put people who like each other with people who like each other and all that sort of stuff. So we decided what we would do is we would have a booklet on the table. And in that booklet was basically a short bio on every attendee at the wedding, and suggested questions at the bottom of each page that you could ask somebody to stimulate conversation.
Fantastic.
And everybody came to us and said, wow, these books are so good. I learned so much about such and such. Oh, and then I went to try and find this person and I asked them this. And it's in relation to what Fred said here. Most of us don't have the ability to really do more than small talk with strangers. And that seems to have died off in the last 20 years. So
that was exactly the point my friend was making yesterday, who felt she lives on her own. She felt she was getting sucked into AI, the AI world. And she said, I'm really thirsting for deep conversations.
Yeah.
And where are they?
Yeah, AI's got a lot of good things going for it, but I agree with you. I think 2026 is the year, statistically, that people are more stressed and more overworked than ever before. There's statistical facts, and it happens both in corporates and in the entrepreneur space, which is where we all are as well. So, AI is not necessarily the biggest gift that we may have thought of. I don't know anybody who at the moment is relaxing and taking more time out than they ever used to. I think most people are working more difficult. Okay, let's open it up. Diana here, aim to be the most interested person in the room, not the most interesting. That's so true as well. Any questions for Jane on, yes, James, go for it.
Jane, thank you. Excellent talk this morning.
Thank you.
But I want to ask you a question. So you have done a lot of mediation in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever come across a case where someone is like 100% guilty?
It's not about guilt, really, the work that I do. So it's
or in the wrong.
Again, it's not about me decide. So I don't decide as a mediator whether someone's right or wrong or guilty or not guilty. What I'm trying to do is work with two or more people who are in a dilemma and help them decide what the way out of that is. So, maybe so we something else I'll come on to, because I'm just working on another presentation at the moment which may be relevant to this, but it's really about me. So supposing it's thinking about a workplace situation, which I've been doing recently with someone, and thinking, can those two people work together? Has maybe one of them not been behaving well? I don't decide that for them. They have to decide whether that's something they can resolve or can't resolve. So what we're doing is surfacing their thoughts and their feelings and the evidence to say, is it really something that you can patch up and you can work with, or is it something that is just because of a particular person's behavior that's not going to work? So one of the presentations I'm working on for later in the month is called When Mediation Goes to the Dark Side. And what we're looking at there is what we call an UMP. An UMP is an unmediatable person. So somebody who has got perhaps a personality disorder, not that I can define or diagnose that, but somebody that you just, and the definition really of an UMP, an unmediatable, is somebody who doesn't have any compassion or it's the other word I'm trying to think of, but any ability to relate. Empathy, any empathy or compassion. So a person who is completely unable to or uninterested in relating to the other person's situation and dilemma. That person is not interested in shifting or resolving. They just want to stay where they are. And if that person, as they are, is disrupting the team or disrupting the relationship, you know, many of us know you have to walk away. I've been in that situation myself before. Laura, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, we had Diane before.
Thank
Laura,
you.
Diane, sorry.
Yep.
Diane.
Where's Diane?
Oh, she's gone, has she? No, she's there.
Gone?
No, she's there.
Oh, you already answered it, Jane.
Oh.
That was the situation I was going to ask you about. Is what do you do with people who are totally unwilling to move in a situation of mediation? Because I've done some mediation in my own businesses, etc. And I've been fortunate that I haven't had anybody that is really unwilling to move. Usually most people have a price. You write a big enough check and everybody's happy. But there are people obviously who just are unwilling to move. And when you have that situation in mediation, and particularly if that person is the leader, that I think makes it even more difficult, because it's very hard to move a leader out. You know, if
so that's exactly the situation we're talking about in the conference, is, you know, where you've got someone who, it's about talking truth to power, because where you've got somebody who's got a very powerful position in the organization, maybe even HR aren't able to challenge them for fear of losing their job. So that person is getting away with dysfunctional behavior, maybe bullying or whatever, and it's difficult to challenge them. And sometimes in that situation,
where does that leave you in that situation? You can go in and you can massage and you can point out all of those issues, but what we're talking about is an ingrained behavioral trait where they probably will die still with that level of ignorance and stubbornness and unwillingness to make change or even see another point of view. When do you actually call it quits and put your hand up and say, I'm out?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you begin to realize that, and you can just say, you know, that person isn't willing to enter the mediation process, or I've got as far as I can go on one particular issue I've been dealing with recently. And what my colleague and I were deciding is we could do is to offer a kind of review, so just to give some feedback of what the situation is. But that comes back to this murky swamp, is that's about facing the brutal truth. It's about the brutal reality here is, I used to think my job as a mediator was to come in and make things nice. You know, people make a mess in the kitchen and then they call me up and they want me to come in and make a nice omelette for tea, but, you know, it doesn't work like that. So, you know, sometimes we can just scramble the eggs, that's all.
That's right. It never turns into an omelette. There's not enough heat under them yet. Not enough heat under them yet. May not be your job. It'll be the universe's job, but one day they'll get heat.
Sometimes that's the case.
So right, Diane.
Thanks, Diane. Let's go, Laura.
My question is similar, in a similar area. It also is based, comes to also what you had mentioned, Mike, that most people don't know what to do beyond small talk. The other thing that, of course, happens in this day and age in political atmosphere worldwide is they go immediately to a very emotional reaction to anything, and which is just one of the biggest challenges. But that's very similar to what you've been speaking about. There are two other things that just, Jane, it's brilliant. I've always loved listening to you and learning from you, and this is just has been wonderful. There were a couple of things that you said that just touched my heart. I think mediation is, when I work with coaches, mediation is one of the highest, forms of any kind of coaching and work that you can do. And one of the things that I mention is Milton Erickson, when the famous hypnotherapist, when he would be with a patient and they would ask him, what can you cure this, or what can we do to cure this? He would always say, I don't know, but I'm curious to find out. So I love, if the mentality we all need to have. So thank you for that. And the other thing that I just loved is the difference between the herd mentality and the herd mentality. That's beautiful. Just beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Anyone else? Any final questions for Jane?
No.
Jane, I just wanted. Can I just say something? Mike, it was just so funny because Jane and I and Andy were sat next to each other last Wednesday night. How bizarre. We haven't met before, and then suddenly we're sat there, and then suddenly you have, Jane's here on the call, which was really amazing. So we managed to pop into PSA UK East Midlands, and Jane was doing a presentation. So thank you, Jane. It was lovely meeting you there.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, lovely to meet you. And we must connect on LinkedIn.
Claire, I guess you just learned that it's very, very. If Mike doesn't know somebody, they're probably not worth knowing, right? So. And Jane's right up there on people who I very much respect and
Thank you, Mike.
and love. And Jane, it's so interesting when you talk about the people who just will not negotiate. I had a couple of those in corporate, and I've had a couple since that just won't go there. And I've tried one thing, and it's worked half the time, just half the time. And I remember with one particular individual, this is outside of corporate, and he was just heading left, and he had all the power, and everybody else wanted to go, not even right, but center to right, not politically, but in the situation. And I said to him, nobody's talking to you about this, so I guess I have to. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, I'm really concerned about the reputation that you've spent years building is going to be torn down because of your position.
Yes.
And he went, what are you talking about? And I said, the other people are too scared to come to you, but they all feel this. And there's a lot of talk behind your back. And I hate to see that because I know how hard you've worked to get where you are. And he went, I need to talk to them. I said, you need to talk to them nicely. And so he actually held an open meeting and said, I hear that I'm doing a lot of things to upset you. What are they? And then one or two people spoke up, and he was able to shift, not all the way, but he definitely shifted, and it created a lot of goodwill. So I often found that reputation card is a good, because a lot of people are, they don't think that they're going to be affected by their position on something.
Yeah.
I've actually got an interesting one this afternoon. I won't mention their name, but on their meeting with me, they've put down how I reference them. I know exactly what that's about because I mentioned on a call that they were on about 6 months ago, something that they said, and they bumped up on the call. They were a participant and said, I didn't say that. I never said that. And I was like, that's weird because I know you did. And then afterwards they came to me and said, I wish you hadn't have said that because that was something I used to say at a point of my life that I don't say anymore. I said, sorry, I didn't know that. And so now they're coming back and trying to say, I don't want to be referenced like that anymore, which of course I wouldn't now that they've told me. But it's fascinating for me how much that spun them out of control in something that they used to do, which actually was pretty harmless, quite frankly. But these
I'll tell you what that's about, Mike. One of the things I talk about not in this talk, is escalation of conflict and how we move from effective conversations rapidly down an escalator to forming narratives in our head about what's going on. But the final phase of that, before you go into the abyss that I've talked about there, is loss of face. And what you're talking about there is people are terrified of losing face. So if you plug into that, and say, what is it that you need to maintain? I mean, you know, you can look at on the global stage of players like Donald Trump and so on. It's all about face, reputation. How am I perceived? And in particular, for anybody with any kind of personality disorder, that sort of sense of maintaining their status, their sense of status, is really, really important for them. So,
yeah, and I think that's the good point. We've got to help people, if we're mediating or having an issue with them, to try and maintain their face at the same time that we're trying to get them to bend a little bit to our side of the coin. I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
Jane, thank you so much for today, this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you are in the world. I really appreciate your time. I think everybody had a really good learning there, and thank you, everybody. The recording will be out a little bit later on if you want to go back in and check into it. Next week on this call, Lundy is back, so be ready for that. And Jane, I wish you all the best until I see you and Morris somewhere around the world.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Go well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.